All right, everybody, we are back here on Setting the Pace, and we are here with the group chat. The guys are all back. All four of us are here once again. I cannot believe this has happened. Lincoln has returned. Carson is here once again. David is here once again, and we're going to talk about everything about this Pacers series going on with the Bucks as they are up 3 games to 1, heading into Game 5 at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, looking to close this out as the Cleveland Cavaliers absolutely blow out the Miami Heat. I mean, I think what'd you say, Lincoln? Second biggest point differential in playoff history.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the Heat hit like a three to keep it from being the biggest ever right at the end.
That's how the Heat seasons went. They went from the 10 seed, to making the play in. Like congratulations, you got swept by the Cavaliers in embarrassing fashion, and now you can go to the draft lottery. So, with that being said, I didn't know they're not even in the draft lottery. Never mind, they're outside the lottery. So screw the Heat, they don't get anything. But we're here to talk Pacers Bucks, and it's been a brutal one for Milwaukee. But I want to get your guys' thoughts on Game 4, what you guys saw from that, and I'll give you guys each about 60 to 90 seconds to kind of share your thoughts on what you saw from that. So, David, since you're the elder statesman here, we'll start with you. Kick us off.
That's right. I still think, if I really have to say, I think I'm still going to go Bucks in six. But ultimately, what I like to see in
For
game
the culture.
four, it's just like it's hard to pick against that. Um, so for myself in game four, what I loved seeing was Tyrese looking to score. There's been talk about like what should his, can he go left? If he goes, that was what, the story's been written is what, I heard recently. The book's out on him. He's making him go left. It's all you got to do. Well, they made him go left, and he was like, okay, fine. And just seeing him be aggressive, seeing him look to score some. There's a couple of times early in the game where I was like, here we go again. We're getting, a mildly contested layup opportunity, and instead we're turning our back to the basket and passing it out to a covered shooter. But that only happened a couple times in the first quarter, first half maybe. And then after that, it was looking to score or looking to find an open guy, not just find a guy. And we saw, halftime, he was not too far from a triple double. I think if he plays, 5 or 6 more minutes in that game, he probably has a triple double, maybe even less than that, honestly. He was just 2 rebounds away. So for me, even though I wouldn't have picked Tyrese to be the MVP for the Pacers of this game, I think he's the MVP of the team in terms of our long-term success in this playoffs. And to see him be, for the first time this series, really be himself 100% and really have a Tyrese game where it's like, getting close to 20 assists, getting over 20 points. And, he wasn't at over 20, but I mean, he was, again, they pulled him with 5 minutes to go. So,
Yeah,
but that's
close
the
to
whole
triple
point.
double.
Close to a triple double and playing, the scoring and facilitating both game and not shooting miserably.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was great that Tyrese was able to, take advantage of how Milwaukee was guarding him and actually drive left and finish and get into the paint and really just make a difference there and just make it more difficult for Milwaukee to guard him because they've clearly not had a great strategy. He's just shot the ball incredibly poor this series. So, that's interesting enough. But Lincoln, you're bringing up the Cavs stuff. I don't know if you saw this as well. I just saw this on Twitter, but Cleveland won the series by 122 points, the most lopsided series in NBA playoff history. That's from Tim Reynolds. So, just what is going on with the Miami Heat? I mean, that used to be your team, Lincoln. That was like your favorite
Oh
team when you
no,
first started watching basketball
I know the dark
growing up,
ages.
and now you're a Thanasis fan. Show the
Yeah,
people.
big Bucks guy. Oh, but yeah, so I would say probably the thing that jumped out to me about game four, and I was talking to my wife about it. I've actually passed on my sickness to her, so she like gets as nervous as I do about games now, which is great. But so we were talking about it, and the thing I kept coming back to is like we haven't really had a game where we played about like top to bottom a really good game. Like game one, I think the Bucks played really bad more than we played like great. And this game was that where we were up like 25 the whole game or around that, you know what I'm saying? And then I looked at the stat sheet, and for most of the game, none of us even had over 20 points. Like it was just a really well-rounded game. Everybody was scoring well. Everybody was like making the right play. Everybody was playing well on D. And I feel like it was almost like game seven against the Knicks last year, where who we played was almost immaterial. Like we just played our game to such an extent that it really didn't even matter. And so I thought that was very encouraging as we look to wrap the series up and go to the next round, not to look ahead too much, but this was probably the most encouraging game of the series to me.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I just think that when you are in position to go up 3-1 and just kind of take the life out of Milwaukee with a big win on the road and close things out at home, like it's not over yet. They still got to win game five. We're going to talk about that. But just being able to put yourself in position to win game five to close out a series is just massive. And it just showed, real maturity from this team. But, I don't know if you guys saw or not, but Tyrese Halliburton was just having a great old time. And similar to Carson over here, he was quacking up the whole entire time. So, Carson's got this duck shirt on. I just can't help it. I mean, show the people this duck shirt. I mean, this is just you just can't make this stuff up. I mean, I think Gary Trent Jr. just missed another layup, and Tyrese Halliburton's laughing again. So, Carson, what did you think from game four?
Yeah, so the thing that stood out to me the most was really just the energy and like focus that the team came out with. They looked really, really sluggish and kind of almost lethargic and very discombobulated in game three. Like, and I couldn't tell if it was were like if the group was off or if Milwaukee just made a really good adjustment, which like don't want to harp on Doc too much, but chances are in a Doc Rivers series, that's not going to be your problem. It's going to be his genius adjustments. But whatever it was, um, it seemed like they kind of really struggled to just like find a flow in the offense. And I think that's an area where this team really struggles because we don't have a traditional ball dominant superstar like Milwaukee has or like Minnesota has or all these other teams. And so we rely very much on getting into that flow state, kind of like Lincoln was talking about, where we just play our game and then sometimes it matters what the other team does, but in a game like that, it really doesn't. So seeing them get into that and get into it quickly and have energy was really, really encouraging. But I think the big thing too really was just Miles anchoring that start because not that Pascal or Tyrese couldn't have gotten going early on because Tyrese got off to a strong start, but Miles really coming out there and just being the really the best player on the floor in the first quarter was something pretty special. And I know Alex, you put out I think before the series a poll on Twitter about who's the factor in the series. And for me, like that was no doubt Miles Turner. Is he the most important or to his team in the series? No, not necessarily, but him winning that matchup and essentially playing Brook off the floor, like we talked a little bit about previously, that was going to be what really kind of dictated how these next few games went. And I think he really proved that in game four.
Yeah, and I mean, just on the flip side of that, if you look at game three and how bad he was, look how bad the team was overall.
Mm-hmm.
So like they still like they were up by 10 at half. I get that, but like when Miles has a good game, it's really hard to beat Indiana. And I think that's kind of why people utilize, kind of see him as the X factor for this team. I went with Nemhard thinking that Kevin Porter Jr. could have a bigger role, but I think that the Kevin Porter Jr. game was, one that we'll all forget about just because he didn't really do much in the second half. A lot of that was in the first half too. So like we'll see if he can come back from anything. But like Kevin Porter Jr. said, don't ever doubt this team. They're down 3-1. If there's anybody that can come back from a 3-1 deficit, it is this version of the Milwaukee Bucks, according to Kevin Porter Jr. So if delusional is a drug, Kevin Porter Jr. is addicted. So I'll just say that. But David, I got to come back to you now here because I did have a user reach out to me. And they were disappointed last time when you were on the podcast because you did not say Pascal Siakam's name right. And so the user's name, I believe it was Laundry Hook. They said that you said like Pascal instead of Pascal. So I mean, you're an English teacher. So what is the
Yes.
correct way to say this?
I've heard it multiple different ways, ultimately.
Does it
So,
really matter?
I mean, to me, I mean, if it matters to Pascal, I mean, if it matters to him, then yeah, I want to say it the way that he wants me to say it. But the way that Google, says to say it is Pascal, which is not what they say in the field house. They say Pascal, like CLE, Pascal.
Yeah,
I don't
I don't
know.
know. I mean, I've always said Pascal just because it's like
Yeah,
how it
yeah,
is spelled, like rascal. But like
yeah. Well, that's
Pascal is
not
how
what you
you'd
just
say
said.
that.
You didn't. Yeah, it's LE is the sound of
People
rascal.
say rascal.
Yeah. I
You
mean, I
know,
don't. You
rascal
know,
flats.
Laundry might be right. I'm not trying to say that any Pacers fan is going to be wrong about pronouncing. You
Yeah,
know, um,
pronunciations.
yeah, and whatever you want to say. But it's not even an English word. It's a French name. So I
Hmm.
mean,
Well, thank you for clarifying that because I did not know that. So, um, But speaking of Siakam, I am curious your thoughts on obviously what he can do in game five, because in game four, he didn't have to do too much, and it was kind of nice to see the team carry him a little bit, where
Mhm.
he didn't have to carry them like it's been in the first three games. So what did you think of Pascal's game in game four?
It was nice, like you said, that he did not have to have a big game. There was times where I was a little bit worried before he kind of pulled away because I was like, okay, Tyrese has had a solid first half, but we've seen him have good first halves and then quiet second halves in the past. Not that like this is this huge problem he's had, but we've seen it before. And generally in games like that, if we're gonna win, it's because Siakam does come through and has like a 15-point third quarter, something big, and that was just not what it was feeling like. It was feeling like there was a possibility, same as in Game Three, where we were up by 10 or ish at the beginning of the third quarter, and then we just didn't show up. So, having Nesmith, Turner, Nemhard, all those people come back out in the second half and still play the same with the same intensity, same aggression on defense, and still hitting shots on offense. So that was big, I think, and just like the ability to have played all of the starters outside of Andrew and Tyrese 30 or less minutes in that game, especially for Pasquale. Uh, for him especially, I think it'll be important because he's not like old by any means, but he's definitely the one person that is older, and so to be able to just not have to worry about it in terms of his legs, his fatigue, that kind of stuff is big.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's done so much heavy lifting for this team, and it's been great to see like he really has carried them when they've gotten close with Milwaukee. It's only been really, if you think about it, game two, and he had a little bit of a run there in the fourth quarter of game three to try to make it like a 10 to 8 point game, but like still, it was kind of like a fake comeback. We see the Pacers do that all the time, so I just think they're asking a lot of him, and I feel like the big thing is to kind of like Caitlin Cooper's brought this up. I think it's a great point. Like his stamina. Like you got to monitor his stamina, and when he's getting tired, you have to pull him just because he just cannot be as effective. And one of the players, Lincoln, that they've been using some in this series, but probably not enough, is Jarus Walker. And we finally got to see Jarus utilized more in game four as kind of like the first guy off the bench and came in for Pascal instead of Obi, which I thought was a nice wrinkle there from Rick Carlisle to change things up. You said it before we came on the podcast, but you're like, I don't see how Jarris Walker cannot be in the rotation moving forward in this playoff series. And so, what are you liking from Jarris throughout the series, and what do you think he can do moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think the conversation starts with he's just a legitimate floor spacer. And that's something that I do think when you think of our high-powered offense, we don't have as many like 40+% shooters as you would maybe think just without like really going through the list. And
Mhm.
he, even though obviously limited attempts, but specifically the time when he was really in the rotation the second half of the season, he was like 43% on like pretty decent attempts. And I think that's a player that when he doesn't have any glaring downsides, like we talk about it all the time. His hands are so good on defense. He's like a pretty high level passer for someone with as limited minutes as he's had in his career. Good rebounder. Like you could tell there's a lot of he has like really good ideas about when he's guarding Giannis, and they always don't always work, but like he's going for the ball. He's attacking the handle. He knows that like there's only really a couple ways where he can like make a difference. And so I think he's a player that is really important to the next 3 to 5 years of the Pacers. But even, in the next 3 to 5 games, I think he's also really important just because having somebody that can come in, play good D, knock down the three. And again, like when the play breaks down, you're not worried about him making a terrible pass that's just going to like end the possession. Like if Thomas Bryant has to like play make at the end of a possession, God love him. That's not what he's there to do. But I just think that Jarris Walker doesn't really have a bunch of holes into his game. Not to say that he's like a star in waiting, but I think he's pretty much like the platonic ideal of a 3 and D guy right now. And I just don't see how he doesn't get at least like 15 to 20 minutes of run, especially as we come up against the Cavs, who do have a lot deeper of a team. And we're not going to be able to throw out as many flawed lineups out there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves here talking about a potential Cavs series. We'll be back to talk about that if the
For sure.
Pacers
Sorry
do
about
finish
that.
this up in game five. I understand the excitement. I understand it. We've been talking about the Cavs. I mean, you had an opportunity there to, throw a Cavs comment in there. So, but
Mhm.
Jarris is one of those players where it's just like every time I watch him play, I'm just so fascinated that he's like still hitting his shot at that, like at such a high clip. And
Mhm.
the fact that like he's got such a high arc on it too, I don't feel like he's ever going to get it blocked. And you bring up a great point. Like I'm looking at like players on different teams, like a Malik Beasley, right? Like somebody like that, or like a Gary Trent Jr., like or AJ Green, even like a 3 point specialist. I feel like the Pacers don't really have that this season, where they have guys that have shot the ball well, but it's very streaky. It's not just like, oh, here's our Kyle Korver, here's our type of shooter that we need on this
Mhm.
team. But you're kind of right. Jarris has kind of become that guy for him, and so I think it's a really good point to bring up because if you see a lot of teams play zone defense against the Pacers, like that's a guy you can go out there and be a zone buster. And I've heard some people say TJ McConnell can be a kind of a zone buster. I think he can kind of bust it up for the Pacers offense more than it is anything else because TJ has been limited. I know he had a decent, a pretty decent game in Game Four. Kind of, figured things out after a really rough start. But Carson, I mean, TJ McConnell is one of these players that you love him and you hate him at the same time. He's a love hate relationship because he does so many good things, but there's so many things that he does that are kind of frustrating at times too. How do you find the right balance of TJ McConnell? How many minutes do you actually play this guy? I thought a really good point from Caitlin Cooper as well was not once during the game on Sunday night was Tyrese out there without one of TJ or Andrew Nembhard in the game.
Yeah, I think with his minutes specifically, it's like it's a delicate situation when Rick was it 2 years ago at this point was in tears because he was like, man, I'm not gonna be able to play TJ McConnell. And I love that they like him that much, that the franchise loves him. I like TJ a lot. But to me right now with this team in this current context, it is more I view him more as a kind of like a wild card that you have up your sleeve to disrupt the flow of the game than I do a reliable backup point guard. Because the thing with TJ is there's so many possessions where it's like, all right, he's going to dribble the air out of the ball and he's going to get to the rim and he's either going to make the shot or he's going to miss the shot. And just for cohesion and consistency, especially if it's a Pascal anchored bench unit, that is not what you necessarily want or need. Um, you need to still be getting into your sets. I feel like generally a good offense, per, like a Rick Carlisle offense, should generally be pretty plug and play. It needs to be able to run regardless as to if Tyrese is out there or not. Is it going to run the same if Tyrese is out there? No, of course not. But when you do have somebody like Andrew Nembhard who can go out there, we've seen that he can be the lead ball handler. We saw what he did in that Boston series last year after Tyrese went down. So all of those things considered, I don't see why we would feel the need to really have TJ anchor that second unit from in the backcourt. So I think I like him being out there, not as the primary ball handler, not necessarily running the offense, and then you don't have to play him as much because of that. Because we do have more depth. Honestly, I think I would much rather have Andrew play the one and then get some more minutes for Shep at the two because of his defense still, and then I would have a ton of TJ minutes. So I think that's something that's really important. Then obviously you have the defensive side of it as well, as to sometimes TJ gets when he's getting steals and he's being a pest, you're like, man, this guy is the what you need in a disruptor point of attack defender. Then other times you're like, man, this guy is getting picked to pieces. In Milwaukee, I'm not sure they really have the personnel to pick him to pieces to the extent, but as we go further into these playoffs, I think we'll see that more. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, they had him primarily match up with AJ Green in the first quarter, and AJ Green I think ended up having like two threes, if not three, to like end the quarter, and it was like a 9-3 Bucks run. Obi hit a three in the corner on the Pacers side to kind of help make it not such a drastic turnaround there for Milwaukee, but it's almost like where TJ and Shep are kind of different. TJ will almost kind of take gambles to try to get a steal versus just staying with his guy, and Shep will just like try to stay on somebody like he's like glued to him. And to me, that's almost like what Jarris used to get in trouble for was because he would jump the gaps or just try to like make these willy nilly gambles, as Rick Carlisle said. And I felt like TJ was kind of doing that too. Like TJ is really good about like trying to get in someone's way and take a charge and be like, be feisty, be pesky, but like he's not overall a great defender. He's just annoying. He's an irritant, and like that's good in theory, but like at some point, like he's still limited with what he can do. So I do think there are going to be some potential minutes reduced there from TJ McConnell if they move on from Milwaukee. If Milwaukee doesn't have a miracle comeback here in the next three games, but David, you said that you think the Bucks are still going to win this one in six. So, I'm just curious. You told me, or your son at least told me on Sunday that you guys were playing as the Pacers on Saturday afternoon, and you were Miles Turner, and your son was Obi Toppin. So
That's right.
I want you to, since you've already been in their shoes, tell me a little bit more about Obi and Miles and what they've done this series and what you'd like to see from them in Game Five.
So for Obi Toppin, he's dunking a lot. At least when my son is playing as Obi Toppin. I mean, he dunks a lot in the game too. But and Miles was out there shooting threes. That's what I was doing. I was passing the ball to my son, Obi Toppin, making dunks, and he's passing the ball to me, hitting threes. In the game four, though, I mean, Miles had a pretty good dunk. I don't know if you guys saw it or not. It was pretty solid.
Do you
It was
have one
pretty
like that
good.
with
I
Obi?
had one like that, but the goal also is like maybe 3.5 feet,
Ah,
maybe 4 feet, and I am 6 feet tall. Not super tall, but I am 6 feet tall. So it wasn't as impressive for different reasons, but it was very emphatic. Um, no, but seriously, what you love to see in Game Four, especially. Miles has had a pretty good series. I'm not going to act like he's had a bad series. He had a really bad game three. Obi, though, honestly, has been almost irrelevant for 3 games. And that was kind of not scaring me, but I was feeling like he's got to get something going for us to like win the series in quick order. If this is going to be a long series, it's going to be a long series because Nemhard has a couple more bad games. Obi never shows up. TJ's unplayable. Like all these people that aren't named Miles Turner, Pascal Siakam, and Tyrese Halliburton have bad games or just never ever have a good game the whole series. Um, and so to have Obi have a good game was really nice, and it wasn't like the Timberwolves game where he's got like shooting 80% from three, and Lincoln's laughing in the crowd at the arena for Minnesota. But it wasn't that good. I wish maybe Game Five will be, but it was he's active, he's playing decent defense in Game Four, but it's the offense really is why we have him here in the first place, and he was doing those things on the fast break that because he was the one that had the last second layup right at the end of the third. Tyrese
Mhm.
threw the 3/4 court pass. That was like that's why we have Obi Toppin, right? That's why we need Obi Toppin and hitting open threes, and that's just exactly what we needed from him. So to have that show up, obviously Miles was more important and more impactful, but to have a role player have a good game was not something we had a lot of other in this series. So to have that happen was big.
yeah, I mean, Facci said on our Game Three recap that Obi was due for a big game,
Yeah.
and Obi had a pretty good scoring night in Game Four, and so when Obi's hitting that three, it opens up so much more for the Pacers, and it's just like you do kind of realize how pivotal he is. And I saw people tweeting after Game Three like, yeah, they're not going to keep Obi long term. They can't afford him. They got to let him go to keep Miles. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, Obi still has a very important role in this team, and I think that you can't undersell what he does bring when he is clicking. You just can't rely on Pascal to play 45 minutes a night, and you need some relief there, and that's where Obi can step in. But I want to talk about one guy that Tyrese Halliburton said he would die for this game, and that's Aaron Nesmith. Probably one of the coolest blocks I've ever seen in a Pacers playoff history. Like I know Roy Hibbert's is up there, but like that chase down block to catch it up or catch up with it, block Bobby Portis, and it leads to a Tyrese Halliburton and one. Just an incredible play, and it can't be overstated how great of an effort that was, Lincoln. So when you look at Aaron Nesmith, this is a guy that is really, to me, grown as a player since last season. What have you liked the most about him, and how much do you think he actually raises the Pacers ceiling?
Yeah, I mean, it was someone who we kind of viewed him in that tier of like, Obi, like some of the bench players where it was like, yeah, they have a good game, it's going to help. But I mean, we lean on him. Like when our season was going sideways early in the year, it's not a coincidence that was when he was out. And I think that in these big games, he's one of the guys that he brings a physicality that you, our team doesn't necessarily specialize in. And so, I mean, I think he's going to bring that. He's going to really just like show up in these big moments. And I mean, at the end of the day, I don't know if he finished with this, but with a couple games left, he was the only player in the NBA that was 50, 40, 90 on the season. So I mean, his shot has come around. He's essentially become the ideal of what he was drafted to be. And it's so cool that he's really flourished here. And I mean, it's truly like it's pretty hard to quantify how big he is with how much he brings that two-way presence. he can create a little bit. Like obviously you don't want him taking like 5 or 6 pull-up jumpers in a game, but if the play breaks down, like you could do worse than him kind of like going into a guy's chest and then taking like a 10-footer. And I mean, yeah, when he's hitting from three, he does fill that role that we talked about a little bit with like Jarus, where if he can take like 6 and hit three, like that just creates so much space. That Miles, the spread pick and roll with Miles, we get a lot more dunks out of that because of Nesmith in the corner there. And I mean, yeah, this game, he ultimately, I think he only played 24 minutes. It wasn't like he was out there the whole time, but
Yeah.
he was a plus 26 in those minutes, and you could feel it. Like our team really does just go up a level when he's out there.
Yeah, I mean, he'll get up in your face and defend his butt off. And then one thing you mentioned, I thought was a great point. Like, he's been so much better at attacking closeouts. And before, he wasn't very good at putting the ball on the floor. And, like, we were excited that, the first year we got him when he drove baseline against the Cavaliers, right? And had that awesome dunk. And everybody was like, oh, man, Aaron Nesmith can do that. And it was like, why can't he do that more often? And we never really saw it. But then he slowly just started growing in that
Mhm.
game. And whether it's like pulling up for a 10-foot jumper, we saw him do a ton of that in the Garden in Game 7 last year when he went 8 of 8 from the field. But now, like there was one I think against the Bucks in Game 5 or Game 4 where he like drove left and like laid it in after like and the shot clock was like winding down. It's just like little things like that I've noticed with him, like just picking up his game. And so I've been really impressed, and I'm really excited to see just him continue to grow because when you think of Aaron Nesmith, you kind of think of him as like a vet, but he's still like just entering his prime. So he still has room to grow and continue to be better. Like to me, he's like an essential player you cannot get rid of with this team. I know that there's been some redundancy there with like Shepard and things like that. People have talked about it. But at $11 million, I mean, what a steal for the Pacers to get him on that deal, and the way
Great
that
deal.
he just plays so hard. It's really remarkable. But Carson, I wanna jump over to what Milwaukee could potentially do to try to make it interesting. I mean, at this point, we saw Doc Rivers punt on the starting five with Brook Lopez to start the second half. What do you think they do lineup wise, and what do you think is maybe their best lineup they can throw out there to at least make Game 5 interesting? Since everybody's kind of already been writing their eulogy, saying their series is over in 5.
Yeah, they're kind of in a awkward spot because I mean, last time you had us on, we talked about what are Milwaukee's options coming into this series, and we were talking about like, oh, it depends on whether or not Dame plays. And at that point in time, I don't after game one, Dame hadn't played, and then Dame are right, correct.
Yeah, he
Dame came
hadn't
back
played
in
in
game
Game 1. He
two.
came back for Game 2.
Right, that's what I was thinking. And so it was like we didn't know at that point. And then he came back for 2 games, and then he went down, and so it's like so that complicates again what they can and can't do. But the thing that I think people are kind of confused that we haven't seen more of is more of that Giannis at the 5, more of that small ball. Maybe that's something that they explore. That's a lot harder to do if Dame's not out there because all of a sudden you have more Kevin Porter Jr. and I don't think anybody. I think Bucks fans lie to themselves if they want more Kevin Porter Jr. I don't think anybody likes watching Kevin Porter Jr. on their screen. Um, and so you have so maybe it's just Giannis and as many shooters as you have on the floor. I I didn't understand the Kuzma trade at the time. I still don't understand it. And to me, that's the big thing where it's like if you're the Milwaukee Bucks, they have one more game left in their season, so it's like what's the point of dying on the Kuzma hill now? But it's like maybe can they find something in him? It's like I saw somebody point out that he just like has not played meaningful basketball in such a long time, and it really like you can kind of tell it in the way that he approaches the game. It's bad when a Kuzma shot at the rim is like for us as good of a shot as like Giannis pulling up from like half court. So that is something that like you might be able to say, oh, Kuzma at the 4, Giannis at the 5, put AJ Green out there, Gary Trent Jr., Kevin Porter Jr. That way you have shooting, and maybe that's a lineup they roll with. But I just don't know. I don't. I'm trying to think of a way to say this other than that Kyle Kuzma cannot be your answer. So
Well,
that really puts them in an awkward position.
I think the Bucks are kind of running out of options here. Like, what other options do they have? I mean, Dame's obviously hurt. Thanasis can't be on the team because of the Achilles injury. So, and Brook Lopez has pretty much proven that he can't play in this series whatsoever. I mean, the way that he started out with the block on, I forget who he blocked, like their shot out of bounds, and I was like, that is the best thing that could happen for the Pacers. Is Brook Lopez having a few moments here at the beginning of the game? So Doc's like, all right, this is gonna be our Brook game, and the Pacers just obliterated him in the pick and roll. I mean, Miles Turner. And Tyrese Halliburton looked like Miles Turner and Darren Collison from like 2017-18 season with him shooting the 18-footer. He wasn't going all the way back to the three-point line. I mean, it's just what it looked like. So I was just really impressed. I was like, man, they're just like they're not even having to go back to the 3-point line. They're just taking advantage of Brook inside the paint. So, or excuse me, inside the arc. So, I don't know. I feel like this is a very weird spot for the Bucks because, like, what do they have to lose at this point? Like, their season's pretty much over. They could just kind of play loosely. Indiana could get a little tight and maybe kind of overlook Milwaukee and just like I don't want them to do that. I don't want them to come in there like they did in Game 3, where they kind of just didn't like have it fully laser focused. I thought they were laser focused in Game 4. I feel like they would have won that game regardless of Dame's injury, just how I feel personally. But if I'm looking at David, what Milwaukee could do here, um, I don't really have any great answers, but like I was so baffled by how Doc decided to kind of make some of these change-ups in the rotation. They completely pull Torian Prince out after the first two games, and immediately when Dame gets hurt, they're like, "All right, we're going to go back to Torian Prince." And it's like Torian Prince is not your point guard. Ryan Rollins was the point guard that was playing for Dame. They didn't go to Ryan Rollins till like late in the third quarter. So I'm kind of baffled by what he's trying to do, and to me, like this might be the last time we see Doc Rivers ever coach in the NBA if they lose this game.
Yeah, I mean, it's Doc Rivers. He'll find a way. You know, he'll be on a team. Someone will convince themselves. I don't know.
Hey, the Phoenix Suns, you never
We
know.
Now they
how
do need a
many?
coach. That's
Oh
such a Phoenix
Lord.
Suns hire right there. Oh my gosh.
How many times though have we been like, he blew this game or blew that lead or whatever, and not that it's all on him because it definitely is not in this series or in any of the series, but he's a factor. So I think to put a finer point on Carson's comments about Kuzma, to me is like it's like you have shot a hole in your boat and instead of being like, well, we need to like do something about it, we're like, no, we're going to just keep sailing. And it's like, okay, but like you just shot a hole in the boat. So it's like, so you traded for Kuzma. And it's like, well, that's not working. We're just going to give up on it. I'm like, okay, but like you lost a player to trade for Kuzma, and sure, maybe that player would be hurt or whatever, but there's a void there, and someone's got to fill it. You can't just be like, oh, never mind, it's fine. So like, I think that like you almost have to try and when we were on about it wasn't quite a week ago. What was it, like 8 days ago
That's
when we
eight
were
days
on
ago.
last time, I kind of advocated for like maybe you try to like post up Giannis. I'm not Giannis, post up Brook. And I'm like, I know that sounds crazy. He's getting abused on defense, but maybe if he gets going on offense, maybe that's can do something to because he needs to. What are you gonna do? Just not play him at all? And then like because like sure, the answer is yes because he's been terrible. But looking forward, it's not just this series. It's like if you have a player like Giannis, you can't just be a prisoner of this 7 game series. You have to be thinking of like so what if even if we do get out of this series, what do we do next series? And if we don't get out of this series, what do we do next year? We're paying some of these guys that we're finding to be unplayable in this series lots of money. Like so maybe we should try to do something with Kuzma this series. Try to get him going in a game, let him take the load off of Giannis a little bit. Giannis is like doing everything. He's definitely pulling back sometimes on defense, and it felt like in game 4 he pulled back on offense sometimes. And maybe I'm reading too much into it. I have not watched as much Giannis as Bucks fans, but I've watched more Giannis than I would like to by about 15 games. Between the last 2 years, I've seen so much freaking Giannis, and I just, if he was my guy, I'd be just like every Bucks fan and be like, yeah, he's MVP because he's an amazing athlete. I'm trying to use the right words. He's an amazing athlete. But I'm not a fan of watching him play basketball. But if I'm a Bucks fan, like he can't do literally everything, and so if you got to try to do something to get Kuzma going, I think, so that he can find time on the court. And I do think you have to probably play Rollins more, or maybe you play you know, Giannis at 5 when you have, Gary Trent or or I mean, I guess you could go KPJ at point, and then when you have KPJ off the court, instead of putting Rollins, and you do point Giannis at that point,
Yeah.
and you don't actually play a backup point guard. But like you're gonna have to get kind of crazy with your lineups, and you're gonna have to get something from somebody other than Giannis.
Yeah, we saw some crazy stuff from Doc there in the fourth quarter. I mean, we saw Jericho Sims and Brooke Lopez come into the game together, and I was like,
Ooh,
how is this a thing? Like, and it was
desperation,
with Pat
baby.
Connaughton. Like, Pat Connaughton hasn't played all series. And it's like, Doc was reaching. He was grabbing for anything, just hoping, please, somebody do something. Like, he punted that game with 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and it was like a 20-point deficit. I get it. Like, you don't want anybody to get hurt, but I truly feel like part of the reason Giannis was kind of out of it in the first half was just because of what happened to Dame. And I think Giannis was kind of just like processing everything because if you go back to since they've won the bubble, every single year someone has been hurt in the first round, or they've been a first round exit, I think, and someone's been hurt every single season. So I'm sure that he's just kind of like weighing everything. He seems like he's almost emotionally detached from what I've heard from him in interviews and like the way he's been on the court. Like he's still playing hard, don't get me wrong, but like I've seen Giannis like fiery, and I don't feel like I've seen the fire from him, Lincoln, at times in this series where like he's still putting up pretty good numbers, but it's like the comment that he made post game was like, I get paid a lot of money to play this game and I play it professionally. I just don't let the emotions get to me anymore. And I'm just like, I feel like he's almost lost his joy to a certain degree. And I'm sure like everything that's just happened in Milwaukee, and like we're saying this from outsiders' perspective. So like I'm not a Bucks person. I don't watch him every game, but I feel like he's just kind of come to the realization like, like this team isn't going anywhere, and I don't really know what the future is for Giannis.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been because Giannis is such a like small market guy, like I feel like there's actually been a pretty concerted effort from like the smarter basketball intelligentsia, not necessarily ESPN, to not like push him out the door. I know that's obviously a big thing at like the big places, but I think it's just impossible. You have to face reality after last night. Dame is not going to play next season. So he will be 37, I think, 36 the next time he plays. He's a small guard at he's 35 right now and he just tore his Achilles. Like you just have to face the facts. He's going to be making I think 53 million next year and then 58 the following.
Yeah.
They don't have a good team. They don't even have a competent team. I really do think they went on that crazy win streak to end the year, and a lot of those were just really fluky wins. Giannis played really well. They shot really well. Like Giannis averaged like a triple double over that stretch. But at the end of the day, I don't think they have the pieces anymore. And even, I mean, we talked about they're over the cap. Brook can walk, and not that Brook's been good. He's been unplayable, but he's at least an NBA player. He can walk this summer, and they don't get any space back. Like he's just gone. And I mean, they're in a situation, and then you look at their picks, they're all out the door from now until 2032 in some form, either a swap or a swap on a swap, or the pick is just gone. And yeah, I mean, when Dame went down, and it was pretty clear like what happened. You know, if you see a guy grabbing for the back of the ankle on a non-contact, it's pretty clear what happened. And it felt so final. And it is sad for Dame. It's sad for, like honestly, not to get too somber here because like, we had a good night, but it is something where you see that and you're like, I mean, yeah, if you're a Bucks fan, like there's a good chance that is the last game that Giannis plays in their building. And I do think if you're Giannis and you look up and down this roster, it's easy to not have joy. Like I understand not being able to play with joy when you're like the guy, like you literally have to hope for like Kevin Porter Jr.'s best game of his career or AJ Green's best game of his career or Gary Trent Jr.'s best game of his career to get like a puncher's chance right now. And I do think that ultimately uh, they never were able to replenish in the draft or just anything like that, I just don't think they have the pieces. So yeah, I mean, I feel like I've rambled here a little bit, but it is I don't think they have the pieces, and I do think they will make a trade this summer just because there's nothing to do. You can't fix this.
Yeah, I mean, hey, Lincoln, I'll just say this: rambling is part of the podcast game. So you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and rambling, which is what I do all the time. But I mean, you bring up some really good points, and I look at the future of this Bucks team, and it's like nobody wants to like talk about this, but like the fact that Dame was probably your best asset to trade, you cannot trade him now. I mean, he's going to be
Yeah.
gone for the whole entire season next year, and that's like, what'd you say his salary was? 53 million next year, and then 58 the following.
It may be 55. I think it's 113 over the 2 years.
Yeah,
So I
so
think
it's
55 then 58.
it's a lot of money, and like they just can't really waive it either, waive and stretch it. Like that's just impossible. So they've got to eat it. I think the last year's a player option, which we know he's probably going to opt into that. So I mean, player options. It's why you want to be an NBA player, ladies and gentlemen, versus a
Yeah.
football player because you just get the guaranteed money. But Carson, one question I want to ask you about the Bucks. You talked about, uh, excuse me, Kyle Kuzma. I was forgetting his name. That's how forgettable he's been in the series. But if you think about this long term, like question, like who do you think would have got more value back in a trade in the offseason? Kyle Kuzma with the Bucks or Chris Middleton had they just held on to him and then waited to kind of blow things up in the summer. Do you think Kuzma could have got them? You think Kuzma can get them a bigger return in the offseason compared to what maybe Chris Middleton could have? Maybe you could even say, assuming Middleton doesn't get hurt in the playoffs.
Before this series, maybe, definitely not now. I think when people are going to see this series and they're going to think, all right, well, is Kyle Kuzma a serious basketball player? And I think that he's answered that question, which sounds brutal, especially considering what Milwaukee gave up. But, and I don't get me wrong, I do not watch a lot of Washington Wizards basketball in the year
I
2025.
know someone that does.
I'm sure, yeah, that's what I hear. But so maybe he would be better suited to answer this question than myself. But from the box scores that I would see in a tweet here and there, it seemed like Chris Middleton had some pretty solid games and actually like won Washington a couple games there down the stretch, and not enough to hurt their tanking chances. But I do think, I mean, if Middleton's healthy, like think I speak for maybe all of Pacers fandom and all of Pacers Twitter that we are way more scared of this Bucks team with Chris Middleton on it than Kyle Kuzma, just simply from the fact that we saw what um, Chris Middleton did last year when it was just him when Giannis and Dame were off the floor, and I that was the game. I think Tyrese still hit the game winner, but he forced overtime and then just was like going band for band with every big shot. I think those the one where Aaron Nesmith hit that massive three, and then we just kind of went back and forth. But again, so all that to say, like after this series, you're kind of back to square one, and yeah, I think you are better off having kept in terms of trade value wise. Certainly for a puncher's shot at a playoff series, but at least now I think that like you're like, man, well at least Kyle or at least Chris Middleton is a playoff caliber basketball player.
I mean, Chris Middleton last year was like hobbling half the time down the court. And like, I think I would take that version of Chris Middleton, like a guy that can barely play defense and can barely run, versus what Kyle Kuzma was brought. And like, it's not just like, oh, let's dunk on Kuzma. Like it's rightfully deserved. Like Kuzma has been awful, and he was brought in to be like replace a huge staple of this Milwaukee Bucks franchise. You're talking about a guy that's probably going to get his jersey retired, and he's just completely stunk. And they couldn't get anything out of it. And then they had to give up AJ Johnson in return to like even make the deal work. And I think they gave a pick swap up as well. So like they just completely like lost and like butchered that trade, and they still haven't figured out the right way to use Kuzma. And maybe if he was in a different system with a different coach, there's maybe someone that could push the right buttons because it feels like Doc defends him more than like really tries to push him. And I think maybe that's not good for Kuzma and what he needs. But overall, I think I've had enough Kyle Kuzma talk for this podcast and the Bucks. But last thing here, I'm going to have you guys just go around. David, I'll start with you. Give me a key to why you think the Pacers win. Lincoln, just fall right up after then Carson.
I think Tyrese keeps the aggression. He keeps talking to Bobby Portis and whoever else he wants to talk to, and he looks to score. And I think that just creates more opportunities to pass. He's just even better when he scores because it just that we saw it in Game 3 where he was never shooting basically, and they stopped treating it as a threat. When he's scoring, and you know he can hit the mid range, he can get to the rim, he can draw the and one there. He can so then it just opens everything up. I think that's what he's going to keep doing. I think he knows he's talked about it enough that he knows that's what he's going to do in game 5.
Yeah, and I mean to echo that, I do think Tyrese is going to have a good game. But on top of that, I think the team in general knows that this Bucks team's they're on the precipice a little bit, and so they're on the ropes. I think first half of next game, if we come out hard, and really come out swinging, I think there's a very good chance that this game's 10 or 15 points at half, and then second half is a lot more about like the broadcast will be talking about did we just watch Giannis's last game as a Buck? And that's never what you want as a fan. So but yeah, I mean, that's never what you want if you're a Bucks fan. It's definitely what we want. But I think that we get a pretty comfortable win at home, powered by the great fans at Gamebridge.
Yeah, and then for me, I just think that there's blood in the water and the Pacers smell it. What did Tyrese, I'm not going to get his exact quote right, but what did Tyrese tell Pascal about them earlier in the series? Just let's get him out of here. And so I think they're going to show up again at home in front of the fans at Gamebridge, and they're going to say where they eliminated them last year. Let's get let's get them out of here, and let's end this rivalry, because after this year, this is no longer a rivalry. Like, this is the last chapter of this rivalry, probably between the Pacers and Bucks for a long while. And so I think they're just ready to end it. After I'm ready for it to be over. I think David said he's ready to be done watching Giannis. And how many times have we watched the Bucks play in the past 2 years? I'm sick and tired of it. So it'll be nice to kind of end this chapter and move on to a new one. So I think all of those things just said and done, I think the Pacers are ready to move on and not have to think about this Bucks team anymore.
I think it'll be the 20th matchup between the two teams today, or excuse me, yeah, today. You're listening to this on Tuesday, so yeah, I get it, and I'm not gonna completely, you know, believe that Giannis has played his last game for Milwaukee. I could definitely see Milwaukee holding on to Giannis, and because like you guys mentioned, like they don't have a lot of assets. What are they gonna do? So could they just try to make moves around the margins once again and just try to build around Giannis? The only way Giannis, I think, potentially leaves is if he asks out. And I mean, they could get a nice return for him, but I don't know. If I'm John Horst and like this is a guy that I've been able to kind of like build my relationship with and try to like find something, like it might just make a lot of sense to keep him and just see what you can do, because it's rare to find a player that's that talented. And it does kind of feel similar to what Dirk meant to Dallas a little bit, just because Dirk got that one championship. Obviously Giannis got that one chip for the Bucks, and now it's just kind of been like the tail end of his career there in Milwaukee is like he's still in his prime, and I think Dirk was probably a little bit past his prime, or at least slowly going downhill. I don't think Giannis is going downhill anytime soon, but I feel like there's a lot of similarities there, just because if he were to stay in Milwaukee, it's going to take a lot to like try to build a really strong contender. So they might make the playoffs, but they might be first round exits, which to me it doesn't seem like Giannis wants to do that, and I think he probably wants to win a few more championships just to try to like solidify his career when it's all said and done. So we'll see what happens. But guys, it's been a lot of fun. I think we've all pretty much felt like the Pacers are going to close this one out in Game 5. I think we'd be more surprised if they push this to a six game than if they didn't. So want to thank you guys for coming on. It's been a lot of fun, and we did it last week. So you never know. Maybe we'll be back next week talking Pacers Cavs. But with that being said, Pacer Nation, we hope you all have a great day. There's a big game coming up tonight, so if you're going to be in the field house, be loud. Rick Carlisle has asked you guys to be louder than you've ever been, as the Pacers have a tough challenge to close out a team and close out a series here and move on to round 2 to play the Cavaliers. So with that being said, Facci, take us out of here. If you're hoping the Pacers win the night, hit me with those 3 words.